I made a 5-minute stop-motion animated film by myself, without the use of generative AI. It took me 8 months, and at least a bajillion hours. If you want to see the film without spoiling anything for yourself, pause the video now, and watch it at the link in the description. Or the link in the comments. It could be in both places. Are you back? Generally, I think of animation as being more high effort than live action films. I think this way, but then I watch Jackie Chan cling off the edge of a bus or fall through 3 stories worth of Christmas lights in Police Story. So on top of presenting incredible hazard to life and limb, everything is very tightly choreographed the way you would have to do in animation. So 80s Hong Kong movies are probably honorary animated movies. Hong Kong action movies have always been really cool, and one day, while changing a fluorescent light bulb, not related, I had an idea to make an animated version of this kind of action kung fu filmmaking. I've also always been a fan of this stop-motion action pilot on YouTube called Terrry, the stop-motion samurai. I thought this project was abandoned, but when I was writing the script, I looked this up and I saw that they are still moving forward with the plans to make this into a feature film, which is pretty cool. This is what gave me the idea to use the wooden sculpted style characters in the movie, because it looks cool. Yep, I knew this wasn't going to be a Lego film, and convincing claymation characters take up a bit more space than I really had to work with. I put together a few wooden prototype men and made little animation tests with them. I'd sculpt parts out of wood and drill small holes to link them together with aluminum wire and hot glue. Eventually, I'd start using kung fu reference videos on YouTube and copying their movements, which is something I'd continue doing into the film itself. So when I started working on my storyboard, I started right in the middle when the action starts. Throughout, I would often plan scenes around using the reference videos and build the scenes from there. These reference videos often involved only a single person practicing, so I had to get a bit creative with translating that into fight scenes between multiple people. In stop-motion animation, it's often difficult to make characters stand on their own, especially if you have them do anything at all. Since it's animation, the characters will be doing something, otherwise it would be still photography. There are some very talented people who do still photography, and that's different from what I was doing with this because it's a film. An animated one at that, so it needs to have animation in it, like the video if you agree. Traditionally, this issue has been solved in a variety of ways. Tie-downs or screw-downs. This means that the characters' feet are tied to the set so they won't fall over while they're being animated, or screwed to the set. If they're screwed to the set, it's called tie-downs, and if they're tied to the set, it's called screw-downs. Just kidding, it's the other way around. I didn't want to do this because I didn't want to drill a bunch of holes in the sets while I was making the animation, because that's not something I wanted to do, because I didn't want to do it. If I was making this with Lego characters, I could easily just have their feet stuck to the base plate, and if I wasn't doing that, I could just ticky-tack them to the ground. And this is an amazing and beautiful technique that has helped people get into stop motion with Lego since the dawn of human civilization. However, since I wasn't using Lego minifigures for this film, it was not an option. Another way people do this they would have external rigs that would hold the characters up from the back, and then they would mask that out in post-production. This is great, except that I would have to spend a lot of time building these rigs, and then I would be in post-production masking them out until I was an old man. So I did rig characters in some shots if they're flying or like disconnected from the ground for frames, but I for the most part avoided this. The solution I ended up using is this. I put magnets in the character's feet, which is, I think, maybe not actually one of the ways they traditionally solve this problem, but it was my favorite way to solve the problem, because the characters I built were not light enough to be held up by sticky tack, but they were light enough to have their weight held up by a neodymium. Let me look this up. No, it's not neodymium, it's neodymium. Neodymium rare earth ring magnets. Neodymium rare earth ring magnets, or magnets. They don't have to be ring shaped. The ones I used were, they don't have to be. And I really like them because they're a lot of fun and they're strong magnets, and I used them to make the characters stand up. All that to say, I had to build my film sets around having some kind of metal surface underneath, so it would play nice with my magnet strategy. I had made a film with this magnet strategy before, but I somehow needed a convincing boat surface, which would normally be made of wooden planks. Eventually, I found that cutting a cereal box into strips, then layering them neatly in grid gives an abstract idea of wood planks. Because the cardboard from a cereal box is wood, kind of. And it would still be thin enough that the magnets could bond to the metal surface underneath. And so I would not use the side with the printing on it. I'd use the side that didn't have the printing on it, because otherwise it wouldn't be the same. I guess it would look like he was running on a cereal box, which he was, but I didn't want it to look that way. From there, it was a matter of building more props, like making a cannon out of an old soda can. Admittedly, the cannon that I made is not really period accurate, but it's big and cartoony, and animation is kind of like a cartoon. It's like a cartoon. It's animation, which is like a cartoon. I made other props as well, as the story demanded, like this aesthetic and Instagrammable noodles stand. A lot of behind-the-scenes videos for stop-motion animation will tell you that stop-motion animation is created by moving posable characters in small increments, taking photographs of them, and then repeating the process several hundred times, so that the illusion of motion is created when these photographs are played back in rapid succession, either on ones, which means 24 frames per second, or on twos, 12 frames per second, which means each photograph exists for 2 frames of the movie, which is traditionally 24 frames per second. I would tell you this as well, even if you already knew it, because I need some narration to play behind these animation time lapses. I spent about 8 hours on this 10-second shot, which may seem like it's a long time, but that's pretty fast really. If I was a real animator, I would spend probably 60 hours on it. But I'm used to brick filming, which is Lego stop-motion animation, where entire films get cranked out in a single day. For more information, Google 24-hour animation contest bricks in motion. At one point, one of my voice actors pointed out to me that the use of simplified Chinese characters advertising the noodle stand would have been anachronistic for a film taking place during the Qing dynasty, as that script style was invented in 1956. Unfortunately, I had already animated a shot that featured this, so fortunately though, the set and camera were still set up from animating that, which gave me a rare opportunity here. I made a new sign, put it where the old sign was, and photographed the noodle stand with period-accurate Chinese characters. Then it was simply a matter of masking that part of the frame into the old shot, and voila! I've fixed it in post. Another person also pointed out that the British soldiers' tricorn hats would have been anachronistic as well for when this took place. However, the tricorn hats were cooler, so I kept them. This is what's known as rule of cool. For this shot, I wanted a dramatic camera orbit of this soldier firing into space while he's not sure where the hero has disappeared to. To accomplish this, I used Lego gears to make a turntable that could turn in appropriately small increments each time I turned the crank. As it turned out, this was a Lego film after all. There's a shot in the film where the camera tracks the hero as he runs down the ship's long corridor. Filming something like this with limited filming space took a bit of planning. I made a rail of sorts from wood, and I built 2 wooden floor pieces that could grip it like a train and slide along it. I figured I'd have to do this shot on ones to make it convincing, and I did a few animation tests to see how I'd make the run cycle work. To make sure I moved the floor at a steady pace, I put a little Lego tower in the corner that gets cropped out later, and I put a tiny piece of construction paper onto the floor. Each time I moved the set, I pushed it until a tiny piece of construction paper was just under the Lego tower shadow. I'd take the picture, then I moved the construction paper so it was just in front of the shadow to start again. Once one of the floor panels had moved enough that it took up the entire camera's view, I would take the other floor panel and put it in front. This gives the illusion of one continuous, long space. This is another shot that I spent about 8 hours on, plus several more planning it and building the rails for it. I wanted to include some more zoomed out, establishing shots to give the film a sense of scale. I used an off-the-shelf model kit for the boat, and I had built a small version of the noodle stand and a small version of the cliffside. To composite it all together, I used compositing, which helped me composite the composition of the scene. Video editing software helped me do this, and by this, I mean the compositing. I also had the idea to do a life-size scale for some shots, like the scene where he's eating noodles. This was mostly because I thought it would be funny to go into over-the-top detail for a sort of mundane task. I built this life-sized hand from wood blocks, and I used a wood bowl to stay with the aesthetic of the film. He picks up the noodles made of clay, so the film counts as claymation. There's also real noodles filling out the rest of the bowl, which are uncooked instant noodles. These are the bulldog 2 times spicy noodles, and they're there because they were too spicy for me, but I bought a pack of several of them, and I didn't know what else to do with them. A fun fact is that these ones are actually illegal in Australia. Tell me in the comments what you think of bulldog instant noodles. Personally, I think the best instant noodles are probably Nongshim Shin Ramen. They're spicy, but it's not so extreme. You'll probably never see me feature those in a stop-motion animation film, because I will have eaten them instead. I also used this scale for one of my dramatic replays, when he catches the cannonball with his chopsticks. A lot of Hong Kong action films will use the dramatic replays for some of the cool stunts, which makes sense. If you have to go to the hospital for a stunt, you might as well roll multiple cameras, so you can include the stunt in the film 3 times. It improves your film runtime to hospital time ratio. For mine, I animated the shot 3 times from 3 different angles, but even so, I didn't have to go to the hospital, since it was animation and I was not performing the stunts in real life. To make these backgrounds, I used new image manipulation program to turn these photographs of rocks into these backgrounds. I'm trying very hard to not say that I photoshopped them because new image manipulation program is not Photoshop, and I also used it on Windows rather than GNU Linux. I tried to make it look like a river or a cliff. The sky I used is a public domain image from MediaWiki, I think. But it's public domain, so I don't have to give attribution, so maybe it's from a mystery source. Borrowing a technique from the 2D animation world, I set up a multiplane by splitting this background into multiple layers and putting it into a 3D space in Fusion. A plane is a 2D space, so there's multiple planes in a 3D space. That's why it's called a multiplane, because there's multiple planes. Yep, one of the planes is the animation itself too. Then I have a fake camera in this 3D scene of 2D planes, and I move that around to give the illusion of camera movement and parallax. That's right, the camera movement in this film was fake. I always just kept the camera still when I animated the shots. Upon finishing, I submitted the finished film to film festivals. I was accepted into the Loony Film Festival for being a Loony. Thanks, Sean Johnson. Thanks, Sean Johnson, for hosting Loony Film Festival and giving me this cool trophy. I put the idea of making a film without generative AI in the thumbnail, so maybe I should address this. I didn't use generative AI at any point in the process of making this film. I did most of the work myself, and also worked with some friends and freelancers to produce the music and voice acting. There were lots of unique challenges I faced producing this film in this medium, and the experience of problem solving and building specific solutions, like my Lego gearbox or sliding floors, is not something I would want to trade away. I don't understand people who think that generative AI belongs in filmmaking, since images and videos produced entirely by machine learning can't be called art. In the act of using AI to realize your ideas, you're robbing yourself and others of exploring your ideas in any meaningful capacity. Your ideas aren't good enough to justify that. Ideas are a dime a dozen, and the execution of ideas brings value to them. If you made it to the end of this video and you haven't watched my short film yet, maybe you would like to watch it now that I have spoiled a lot of it for you. It's right here. Here's the link to it. Adios.